Hello and welcome to our Wednesday webinar from the IEA Clean Coal Centre. My name is Benedicta and I'm part of the communications team here. Our monthly webinars are based on our technical reports, which are available from our website, www.iea-coal.org. Residents of member countries and employees of our sponsoring organisations can download our reports at no charge after a one-off registration. The subject for today's webinar is the IEA Clean Coal Centre and the New Normal, presented by Dr. Andrew Minchener. The slides from the webinar will be available to download from the webinar page after on our website shortly after this presentation. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Benedicta. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Clean Coal Centre, it is a privilege to be giving our August webinar. And I've set out here what I want to cover in the next 35 minutes or so. Briefly, some words about who we are, what we do and why we do it, some words on the changes we've made to our working practices due to the COVID issues, but then to get really into the key parts of our activities, which is looking at sustainability and our international dimension on that, and then talking a little bit more detail on our different aspects of our work program, how we're taking those forward in these difficult times, and introducing some new activities, in particular our Knowledge Partners Network. And then finally, I'll wrap it up with a few words about where we might go from here. So, who are we? We are a technology collaboration program. We are organized under the auspices of the International Energy Agency, but we are functionally and legally autonomous. That's like the legal bit that's out the way. Perhaps more interestingly, we are funded by a mixture of national governments and corporate industrial organizations, and we're dedicated to providing independent information and analysis on how coal can become a cleaner source of energy compatible with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This slide shows the representation of our national government members, which are on the left-hand side of the slide, and our corporate industrial members, which are on the right-hand side of the slide. You can see amongst our national government members that 7 of the 8 are from OECD countries, but we're very pleased to acknowledge that South Africa is in fact a long-standing government member from a developing country. In contrast, the corporate industrial sponsors members are in fact all from developing countries, namely 2 members from China, 1 from India, 1 from Russia, and indeed 1 from South Africa. The role of our members, besides providing the money that allows us to undertake our work, is to provide strategic guidance for the evolution of the work program. And again, as I'll indicate through our presentation, this is currently reflecting the recent major changes in global energy use. They also have some administrative functions to review our company performance, particularly ensuring that our work remains policy relevant, key issue. And they also have some oversight on administrative and financial policies. This sets out in very outline terms the structure and indeed focus of our work program. Now, the core of the program is our work on producing policy relevant studies on all aspects of coal production, preparation and utilization. There's a focus on energy efficiency and environmental performance, but we do cover all aspects. And more recently to that, we've introduced an additional aspect here, which is looking at coal transition issues that is becoming important, at least in some regions of the world. Alongside that, we have our outreach activities that very much complement the studies, where we run a number of events, which includes a clean coal technology conference and various specialist workshops. And we also provide input to some organizations' policy relevant R&D initiatives. As well as providing support to our members, we do also work with a number of like-minded external organisations on complementary initiatives. And currently that includes the IEA Coal Industry Advisory Board, the United Nations Environmental Programme, the US Department of State, and the European Commission's Research Fund for Coal and Steel. And I'll be talking a little bit more about those specific activities shortly. Like everyone else, COVID-19 has impacted on our work. None of it's what you would call is good, but we are maintaining and adjusting, as everyone has to the difficult circumstances that we all find ourselves in. Yes, we have an office in London. No, we haven't been using it since about mid-March, and we now currently all work from home. But we can, of course, maintain contact both individually as a group via Microsoft Teams in our case, and with other organisations through whichever systems they are also using. So we're still maintaining operability in that regard and are not isolated. We've had to adjust our work programme, of course, to meet the limitations arising. So our studies programme, which can all be done at home, and plus with linkages through the Teams activity, is now comprises our major activity. In contrast, our outreach programme, which by definition requires us to travel to places, mostly out to developing nations, as in our current programme would be, is now rather limited, but we are continuing with some activities that we can take forward at least a little way without the need for travel. So that at least the near to medium future, we can keep the outreach program ticking over, but there will be a need to look very carefully at that in the not too distant future. I want to say a few words about our communication initiatives. You've heard from Benedicte and a colleague Rebecca who look after this aspect of our program. I think we've got a cracking website. I think it's a very good portal for all of our resources, and I strongly recommend that you find the time to have a look through it, because there's a wealth of interesting information nicely presented on that website. Our webinars are on our YouTube channel, so you can go back to any of the webinars since time began. We also have our blogs, when they offer a more personal perspective as well as expert opinion, and they are some of our most popular content. And we've initiated more activity engagement on Twitter and LinkedIn. So please connect with us. We always welcome feedback and dialogue. Visit the site, engage with us, and we'll be very happy to get back to you on all sorts of issues. Moving on to a key part of the presentation. I want to say this, it's very important. The IEA Clean Coal Centre supports the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Indeed, our operating framework is designed to identify and publicise the best practice in every aspect of the coal production, transport, processing and utilisation chain. And you can see at the bottom of the slide the particular sustainability goals that are relevant, particularly relevant to clean coal activities. You can see, for example, 7, affordable and clean energy, clearly appropriate. But we also react to a lot of others like climate action, life on land, and partnerships issues, which I'll come on to shortly. Within that, we have a very broad program. We look at policy and regulatory issues. We do quite a lot of work, or a lot of work, in fact, on financial resourcing. We look at market issues. We look at technology development and deployment, and that includes efficiency improvements, lowering greenhouse and non-greenhouse gas emissions. We do work on reducing water stress. And also, we're particularly concerned with looking at how one can ensure there's adequate poverty alleviation, and that can best be achieved through universal access to robust, reliable electricity. And finally, we also look at the social license to operate. So this is very much a key issue for us, the Sustainable Development Goals, and particularly its relevance to developing nations, most of which are coal users, and indeed perhaps best describes what we do and why. I have a few sort of bullet point slides. This is one of them. The world is not a homogeneous place. It is a very heterogeneous place. We have different regions. They have different energy opportunities and options, and they're at various stages of industrial development. Looking, let's say, the United States, you're going to get a very different picture to looking at Eurasia or Asia itself, for example. So each region there may well have different priorities, almost certainly will have different priorities for ensuring a sustainable future. That doesn't mean any of them are necessarily right or wrong. They are different because of the nature of the region and its current state of development and geographical advantages or disadvantages. I think let's remember one key thing. Over 50% of the world's population actually lives in Asia, where they have access at present to some 35% of the world's energy use. So that is very much a key area. Well, there are others, of course, but that is a key area and one that we are particularly concerned with when we're looking at sustainable use of coal and sort of improving the overall opportunities in that part of the world. Very quickly on the energy trilemma, this is actually a simplistic version of every rational energy strategy in the world. You're looking to balance security of energy supply with energy costs, while ensuring that you can achieve acceptable environmental conditions and to contribute positively to climate protection through reduction of carbon emissions. The point about the energy trilemma is you can't max out on one of those three requirements. You have to make a deal with all three, and that represents an energy compromise, which is important to remember. And when you take that into account with the different environmental situations in different parts of the world, you can see why different parts of the world, those different parts of the world, are adopting different approaches as they move forward in these difficult times. So just to emphasize that point, the OECD countries are currently focusing very much on CO2 emissions reductions, while the developing countries have much broader needs, which also are focused on a rather shorter timescale. They are conscious of the need to deal with carbon emissions, but they're looking at a 2030 timeline for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a recent output from our studies program, and this is a list of the reports that have been issued within the last 12 months. You can see there that there are a very wide range of topics being considered, and all of which are considered within that, not just on technical or scientific aspects, but very much on policy relevant issues. I can't go through all of them in the time, but let's just highlight a couple. We've been looking very much at how you finance new coal-fired plants. If you believe some of the press that one sees, that's no longer happening because multilateral development banks no longer will fund new coal-fired plants. It is still happening, and it's still happening very significantly with other financing sources, which may or may not be an advantage or disadvantage to the company that's seeking to establish those power plants. We've been looking at electricity market designs for a reliable grid. That has all sorts of issues associated with it, including unit cycling, stability, load fluctuation, and so on. And then with that, of course, we've been looking at the impact that we have on coal plant performance. This is another list from our studies program. This is ones that are either in preparation or under review. And again, it's a very wide mix, reflecting the different, the wide interests of our members and indeed ourselves. Again, picking one or two out, we've looked at the impact on and perspective for coal under the emissions trading schemes or carbon tax schemes. That's been a very interesting prospects rather. We've looked at digital transformation of the coal sector. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on there. And recently we've just issued a report on carbon capture, utilization, storage, looking at both the status, the barriers to large-scale and extensive deployment, and the potential, if we can get through those barriers, for how this technology can make a major difference to achieving least cost carbon neutrality in the future. Moving on to our outreach program, we did run a co-firing workshop in in February this year in Japan. But now our whole program has been put on hold until 2021. I will highlight our Clean Coal Technology Conference, because as shown here, we have got a save the date for that, which is the first week of June, when we expect to be running that conference in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA. And we encourage you to take a note in your diaries and keep a lookout from our various publications and resources and our website that will keep you up to date in how that's progressing. The other activities are single subject specialist workshops, still specialist workshops that get sort of maybe 80 to 100 people, but they're all on hold at present because we have not yet been able to look carefully at how we can schedule those into next year until we're a bit clearer on how the COVID-19 issues are being addressed. But there's again a wide range of topics you can see there. Co-firing biomass, for example, with coal. Biomass is carbon neutral, so co-firing it brings down the carbon intensity in a coal-fired plant. This is a technology that was established in the West, but has now very much moved to the East. And it's being adapted there and utilized there, but for rather different reasons than it was used in the West to start with. Multi-pollutant emissions from coal covers particulates, SOx, NOx, and very much mercury, and that's a long-standing program. And our advances in high-efficiency, low-emissions coal power plant is another one that's been running for many years, and that's looking both at how you can improve the efficiency by improving the temperature and pressure of the steam conditions, but it's also looking at how you can look at smart design of the coal-fired plants, looking at better ways of integrating the various systems and subsystems to eliminate losses and inconsistencies and ensure you maximize your efficiency outputs. Moving on to the capacity building work that we're doing with like-minded organizations under contract. That includes work for the organizations as shown there, which I've mentioned already, but also we've added in the Associations for Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, where again we're in discussions about how we may better get involved in some of the activities that are of importance to them. The UNECE initiative, I'm very pleased that I've been nominated as a Vice Chair Designate of the Bureau for the UNECE Group of Experts on Cleaner Electricity Systems. For every good thing comes some work, so currently I'm also producing for them a number of technology briefs on aspects of power-based integration of coal with renewables. And I'm also a member of their task force that's seeking to establish a framework for carbon neutrality in the USC region with a 2050 timeline. Our US Department of State capacity building is taking place in Indonesia and India. In Indonesia, we are looking and working with the coal power sector to identify sustainable strategies for mercury monitoring, evaluation and reduction. The reason for that is that Indonesia has recently signed up to the Minamata Convention, and so it needs to now think its way through how it's best going to bring down its mercury emissions, and we're very much helping with them and explaining options and ways they might go forward with a series, and then there's a big series of capacity building workshops with the stakeholders within the Indonesian coal power sector and other organizations in that country. When we look at India, we're again working with the coal power sector, but on a rather broader base. We're looking at capacity building for all conventional emissions control requirements, again, but recognizing that such strategies may provide the associated means to limit mercury emissions. The whole point about this work is that it will provide long-term and sustainable benefits for the coal power sector in both Indonesia and India. And there's also scope that what we put together, which will obviously be provided as a package to both countries, we or they may also have scope to use it to assist other emerging economies in due course. We are undertaking an in-depth study for the IEA's Coal Industry Advisory Board, and we're seeking to establish a pathway for reducing carbon dioxide and other emissions such as SOx, NOx and particulates from the coal power sector in India out to on a timeline to 2040. This recognises very much India's position as the second largest coal power generator globally, and there's a lot of useful work and assistance that can be provided from OECD organisations as well as ourselves to this major developing country. We in fact have done a previous study a couple of years ago for the Coal Industry Advisory Board where we were looking at China CCUS retrofit opportunities. And that again was a very valuable thing for what is the largest coal power generator globally. Another message, which is really pretty much the same message I've said before. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to countering change. If you think of my previous message about the heterogeneous nature of different regions in the world, again, what will work for one region, say an OECD region, is not necessarily going to work for the developing country regions. And that really has to be taken into account when there's any dialogue in terms of how the developing countries might move forward. High efficiency, low emissions coal power technology is an important development that's taken place initially in Japan and then subsequently particularly in China, but also now in India and other countries as well. And what this is showing essentially is as you improve the efficiency of a coal power plant, the carbon dioxide emissions per unit of electrical output go down. If the more efficient the plant is, the less coal you have to burn, the less carbon dioxide you release. And you can see here that there have been various stages. The initial stages was a relatively low efficiency option, but then that's been very quickly succeeded by others where we go into higher temperature and higher pressure steam conditions, linked with the clever design stuff that I referred to earlier. And currently the best plants in the world are just have an efficiency that's going to be just under 50%. What we very much expect to see from the innovative work that's been going on in a number of countries, particularly China, that we could be seeing efficiencies up to 54%, which is a tremendous improvement over really quite a short period of time. When we're talking about importance for a sustainable energy future, we believe very strongly that carbon capture and storage technologies are going to be essential for managing a transition to a least cost, so that's stress least cost, and reliable net zero electricity system. The role and value of CCS, of course, will change with different regional contexts because of the different characteristics that we've already talked about. But that also includes the availability in those ever regions of renewable power and what their electricity demand profiles are. CCS has continued to develop over the years, but it's really at the point where it needs to get deployed and rolled out on a commercial basis because it provides the means that coal power plants, which are very useful and valuable and seen as important by many parts of the world, can then become very low carbon dioxide emitters with the addition of CCUS. So CCS adds value in all power systems, and we believe it is uniquely valuable when deployed indeed with intermittent renewables, as we are seeing so much on the grids. To put it bluntly, currently we need dispatchable power on the grid systems to ensure that you can get stability, because the renewables that are being used are variable renewable energy sources such as wind and solar. These do not operate all the time, and yes, you can do a certain amount of storage through batteries, but you cannot look at addressing the bigger picture here, where coal or indeed gas provide a very important stability role. Putting CCS there, as I said, will mean it becomes a low CO2 stability role as well. This is a slide that we've been provided, that was produced by Imperial College and for some work they did for the Coal Industry Advisory Board. We have a great regard for the work that's being done at Imperial College and other organisations on this particular topic. And what this is showing is 5 regions: the UK, Poland, New South Wales in Australia, Jamali in Indonesia, and 2 regions in the States. It has like a business as usual scenario, which is, we're looking to the future here. So this is including carbon capture and storage. And one can see in each region, that results in a relatively low total system cost. If you don't include CCS, that changes the picture entirely. And to ensure that you can achieve sufficient stability and reliability, it's going to push the total system costs up by maybe a factor of 2 or 3 or more, eventually to perhaps 7. And if you go down to renewables and storage on their own, then that just exacerbates the problem further. So we believe that you can get a strong positive financial benefit in all of the net zero scenarios that were investigated in this study by Imperial College. And incorporating CCS allows for an electricity system with a very low marginal cost relative to the business as usual scenario. But if you exclude CCS, you get the opposite effect with a very massive increase in the total system cost. There's further work being undertaken on this, and we're very pleased to note that we are working with Imperial College, who are doing some work for us at present under contract, which we believe will help to develop the picture further, and we look forward to telling you about it in due course. Having said all that, it is also important to recognise that in certain parts of the world, coal use is declining for different reasons. In the USA, it has declined quite a lot due to the fact that they are, as they say, blessed with very, very cheap natural gas, so they're using that. And it's also starting to decline in the European Union on the back of their policy drive to become the first climate neutral bloc in the world by 2050. And they see an important part of that is to eliminate coal from their energy mix and look very much to running with renewables and energy storage. I have to say that's a unique approach. That's their choice. And so they're very much going it alone at present, but we all watch keenly to see how this works out. But what is clear, that if you're going to close down mines and if you're going to close down power plants and other parts of the coal-based infrastructure, you've got a lot of remediation to do, and that introduces new environmental challenges, which is actually something that the Clean Coal Centre was looking at and continues to look at from about 4 or 5 years ago. And in fact, this slide is from one of our studies undertaken, I think it was in 2017, which was looking at remediation of old mine sites in the UK, amongst other places. And this is particularly from the UK. And it was showing that there's a lot that can be done. And there's also the opportunity, even if you don't do this for it, so if you do this for the mines, there's also for power plants, maybe there's repurposing that could be applied, because you've got a lot of technical and engineering equipment on those sites. Perhaps it can be used for something in a different way. Innovation is what's going to be required there. But at the same time, as one door perhaps closes, other doors open. And one of the things that we find very interesting is non-power uses for coal, which is starting to grow significantly, over 100,000 tonnes a year. We already know about coal being used to produce high-value chemicals and future fuels. There's a lot of work being done there in China, and the carbon emissions could be controlled through the addition of CCUS, which on that type of system will have a very low total system cost. But coal can also be used as a raw material in the production of a wide range of high added value products, including graphene, rare earth elements, carbon fibers, and nanometers. And coal fly ash is no longer seen as a waste product. It's a useful product, primarily for use in construction situations. But there are also alternative uses that are emerging, perhaps as a mineral oil source, for use in catalysis systems, for water purification purposes, and indeed, if you can break down the coal and some parts of the ash to produce humic products, you can use it as a fertilizer. Right, we are moving on. This is my last major topic, but it's one that we're very, very keen on. We very much hope you will all be able to work with us on this in the future. And this is our Knowledge Partners Network. This is a network for companies and organisations and researchers that are positively involved with coal. And we see it as a means to show global solidarity between organisations that have a positive interest in sustainable coal utilisation. And we want to use it to showcase the breadth of our global knowledge partners, to better exchange information, and to encourage future collaboration. We're delighted to note there's already a very positive and growing response from companies, universities, and other organisations to become part of this network. We started pushing the idea and contacting people that we already knew and others round about the end of last year, beginning of this year. And by the end of this July, we've had 80 partners signed up from 19 countries, and we have further invitations requests currently being processed. So we think this is a good start. There's a lot further to go, but we're very pleased with the response we've had so far. This is taken from our website, and it actually shows the logos of those 80 organisations that have said they will be our knowledge partners. We're very keen to increase the number of those so we can take up further parts of our website. So we will be continuing to push this very strongly in the coming months. In terms of the geographical spread, there's 19 countries represented in that knowledge partners, and in accord with the fact that I've been focusing very much on developing country needs, I want to just highlight that of those 19 countries, 7 are developing nations, which include China, India, Indonesia, Mongolia, Russia, South Africa, and Turkey. In terms of our early steps for sharing knowledge, we want every one of those organisations that has agreed to be a member to sign up and register on our website. That gets them access to our reports, our free reports, and they can from there sign up for our weekly newsletter that keeps them informed on a regular basis. We want to improve awareness of who is doing what on sustainable coal issues, and we want to encourage our members to share press releases and event announcements. There's also opportunity to perhaps contribute or work with us on our studies program. These are studies that are either just started or about to start in the near future. So we're keen to hear from any of our partners who may be able to provide technical and financial data that can feature in these studies, where it will be fully acknowledged as that they are the source of that information. Every 6 months, we will send out a list of these studies in this form in progress, those in progress or about to start, plus the authors' email addresses, so that our partners can converse with them directly and see where they may be able to make a positive input to our program. We're also keen to hear from partners that would like to peer review specific draft study reports. As was when we have completed our work and our review, we then put it out to external organisations to provide their independent peer review, part of our quality control. There's also some opportunities in our outreach program. You could be a local partner in one of our events or one of our capacity building programs. But we'd also perhaps encourage you to take advantage of our 10% discount for attending our events, at least when they get going again. There's no catch with this. If you are a knowledge partner of the Clean Coal Centre, you get a 10% discount for attending any of our events in any year when we are continuing this program. So please take advantage of this whenever you get the opportunity. Final slide. Where do we go from here? There's no one-size-fits-all approach for climate change mitigation, heterogeneous regions. So there's going to be a need for a range of solutions in order that we have a viable way forward for climate change mitigation, because those chosen in OECD countries will not necessarily be of value for developing countries. That doesn't mean to say that OECD countries should not be looking at how they can assist developing countries to put their own plans together and implement them. And it's also important, bear in mind my remark about Asia, that without a proper engagement with developing countries, all other efforts risk being irrelevant. There's a lot that we can do with high efficiency, low emission technology, not least to replace obsolete coal technologies. And we also want to see CCS and CCS technologies being included on coal plants to ensure that they become low carbon emitters. So in summary, there is a need to shape the transition dialogue to include all energy sources, and that includes coal, so that the world can devise a pragmatic and effective pathway towards achieving a 1.5 degree scenario. I mustn't miss a chance, so one more time, save the date, early June next year for our CCT 2021 conference, which will be in Pittsburgh, USA. That's it. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you found it interesting. I say we're very keen to talk to you when you get the chance. That brings me to the end of the presentation, and I will now look to see if we have any questions. Oh, a fair few. Just a second. The first question was about from an Andy Mizia. Sorry if I've pronounced that right. The Netherlands just retracted its support for biomass utilisation in power generation. Do you see this changing the global view of biomass use as an enabler for future carbon neutral options? I think the important point there is that in the OECD countries, you haven't said why they retracted their support, but in the OECD countries, that was very much seen as a means for controlling carbon dioxide emissions. That's also seen as a means of supporting that in developing countries, but they will not be looking to use wood pellets, imported wood pellets, or such materials. They will be looking to use the very vast amounts of agricultural waste, rice husks, rice straw, corn straw, and so on, which currently can end up being burnt in an uncontrolled manner and create a major pollution problem. So they will see that they will use that in an effective way on their coal-fired plants, as much as anything to improve the clean skies opportunities in their countries. I hope that helps. We have a lot of information on the situation with coal biomass, and so I'll be happy to talk to you. And I've just looked at the second question. Oh, it's the same question again. So yes, I won't answer it twice. Thank you. Let's move on. With variable renewable power options becoming cheaper, it appears that energy storage options will become more important for improving the economics of coal power plants. Is the IEACCC doing work on any energy storage technologies? Do you do any work on the availability of thermal generation? Oh, sorry, that's the subsequent question. So the question is sorry, it appears that energy storage options will become more important for improving the economics of coal-fired plant. Energy storage is important, obviously, but I think it's also important to bear in mind what we can achieve with energy storage at the moment, which is not the usual panacea of balancing the systems particularly. The grid systems are very much loaded with variable renewable power, and it is becoming cheaper on a levelized costs of electricity basis. But as you load the systems with variable renewable energy, you'll actually find that on a total system cost basis, as you put more and more renewables on the grid, a lot of which is then used very intermittently because of the nature of the renewable energy, that pushes up the total system costs enormously, and it makes the system very hard to control, which is where coal comes in, or rather dispatchable power comes in, which can be coal, gas, or indeed biomass, which provides the means to put thermal inertia into the system and to ensure the stability of the grid system. There will inevitably be other developments, both from that side of the argument to obviously the storage side. Storage does provide some benefit, but not as much as people feel that is needed. Again, I hope that helps. We're doing a lot of work on those topics. As I indicated, we're doing some modelling work with Imperial. We've got various study reports on that, and we're very happy to talk to you about that further. We have a question from Alina Vakala. Do you do any work on the availability of thermal generation plant? Yes, we do a lot of work on the availability of thermal generation plant, but it tends to be wrapped up in other reports. Again, if you could contact us in more detail, we'll be very happy to provide you with information on that. And indeed, if the reports are more than 6 months old, we'll provide you with the reports as well once you sign up on our website. We have a question from Yokesh Singh. Where can we get more information on the work done by Imperial College? There's a certain amount of work being done by Imperial College, as I indicated. It's very interesting work, and there are other organisations in other parts of the world who are doing similar work, all of which is being gradually brought together. Again, if you contact us, we can provide you information on what is being done with Imperial, and we can put you in touch with people there if that will be of benefit. I have a question from Jose Martinez. Flexible operation of thermal power plants is being demanded more and more to help energy transition. That's a statement, not a question. But you're quite right. Flexible operations are becoming increasingly important, which is why I made the remarks I just did to one of the previous questioners, and why it features so heavily in the program. In the studies that I put down, we will look at flexible market design issues for the grid. We've got other studies going on looking at the technical issues. Got a very technical report coming out, unusually for us, looking at all sorts of aspects of flexibility. I think that will be available, is about to become available for review, and it will be available to organisations in the relatively near future. Another question from Mr. Martinez. How can we engage with the Clean Coal Centre to provide ideas and updates on disruptive technologies? You could become a knowledge, I don't know which organisation you work for, sir, but if you would like to become a knowledge partner join our knowledge partner network, you can get that sort of engagement, which is exactly the sort of thing that we want to sort of be able to take forward with organisations worldwide. The next question is from Emrah Oztunk. Sorry if I haven't pronounced that right. Do you believe that the cogeneration of coal firing will support the green transition, or will it even further expand the development of the coal-fired CHP industry? Furthermore, isn't it a great problem to sell biomass fuel from Canada to Europe or Brazil to Europe in order to burn green sources while polluting with the shipping industry? That's a very interesting question. I think one point I will make directly is that the material that's brought over to us from to Europe, or has been brought to Europe from Canada and the USA, is the wood that's being used is wood that's grown for various purposes, and this is the trimmings, the branches and that, whereas the stems of the trunks of the trees are used for furniture and other wooden needs. So it's getting rid of what is a waste product over there. Bringing it over here is an interesting question, and I'll be blunt, I always find it a little difficult to see how the best thing is to take all this material from the States and float it all the way across to Europe in order to into our co-biomass programs. But I would emphasize again that for the developing countries where they're using their indigenous agricultural wastes like rice husks, rice straw, corn straw, it provides a double benefit. It provides a means to fire carbon neutral material in their boilers, and it also helps to get rid of a problem, but if it's not dealt with, creates a major clean air problem in parts of China and other countries. But again, we have a lot of information that we can share with you on those issues. Another question from Mr. Phillips. Do you have any recent information on the operation of the new reheat USC that was built in China? Which new reheat USC are we talking about? Almost certainly, yes, we have very good contacts with China. I have very good personal contact with China. It's a country I've visited over 180 times in my career. And I have very good contact with both the power sector and the organizations that are doing the development, very innovative development work over there. If you can give me a little bit more information, I'm sure we can provide you with some help there. So that takes me to the end of the questions. I'm very pleased to have seen the questions. If we can help you further, or we can help anyone else who's listening to this webinar, please contact us further and we'll see what we can do to help you. Thank you very much. Back to you, Benedicta.
Thanks so much, Andrew. And all that's left for me to say is, again, the slides from this webinar will be available to download from our webinar page very shortly. And our next webinar will be in September on Wednesday the 9th, same time. It'll be on a high efficiency, low emission roadmap, and will be presented by Toby Lockwood. Thank you all for joining us today, and goodbye.
Could I still hear you, Benedicta? Or have you gone? That would appear to be that.